The Prime Minister's promises to bring immigration down were his first public words of 2024 across the pages of the Daily Express, on Twitter or X, and echoed today by his Home Secretary, who claimed a towering backlog of asylum cases had been worked through.
We said that we would process them all. We have processed them all. In a small number of cases, particularly complicated cases where there are disputes about age or security concerns, there is further work to do.
Figures out today do represent a victory for the government, with boat crossings this year down by some 36% and 112,000 asylum claims opened and given an initial decision. But when the government talks about the backlog, it means cases that hadn't been looked at before June 2022, the so-called legacy backlog. The majority have been assessed, but 4,500 cases the Home Office claims are complex are still outstanding. And the backlog itself has been rebranded. New cases after June 2022 are now called the flow backlog. Add them and 99,000 claims remain unopened.
Well, Rishi Sunak's claim to have cleared the asylum backlog is just totally false. In fact, the figures are nearly 100,000 cases, and they haven't even fully cleared the bit of the backlog they were targeting.
Government statistics out today show an interesting acceleration in the process towards the end of last year. 50 of the 110,000 application decisions were made in the last 3 months of 2023 alone. Now, that's a five-fold increase on the same period last year. But the figures also show us that there's been a dramatic increase in the number of applications being shelved. Many are worried that the majority of those whose applications have been withdrawn will have gone under the radar.
Of the 112,000 decisions that were made in 2023, there are 35,000 of those, so around a third, where actually that decision wasn't a grant or refusal, but that claim's just been taken out of the backlog. The information doesn't tell us whether it's because that person chose to withdraw the claim or the Home Office withdrew it for them because they maybe hadn't responded to a letter from the Home Office. But what we're really concerned about at the Refugee Council is that we simply don't know where those people are or what's happened to them. And certainly we think that many of those people now will be at risk of exploitation.
The majority of those in the backlog mentioned today will have arrived outside of government schemes by boat, lorry or other means, and more than 2/3 have been granted asylum, an admission through numbers that many of those crossing by boat do have a legal right to live here, like Farzad, who fled religious persecution in Iran in 2019 and was granted asylum a year and a half later.
I didn't expect to see the scenes that I saw there. It was really traumatic. I hope that this narrative of like these people has come to cause any harm to the country, or to that they have come by choice, and you know, this narrative of like this threatening narrative of like people making them feeling more insecure and more traumatized. Kind of, we can get rid of that.
Under the government's illegal migration bill, many of those joining the current backlog who arrive by boat or lorry can be detained, or, if the government can clear the legal hurdles, sent to Rwanda to be processed through their asylum system. The Supreme Court ruled that unlawful in November, but it's a policy central to Rishi Sunak's election pitch role, whether the plane set off before then or not.
Well, no one from the government was available to come on the programme, but earlier I spoke to the Shadow Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, and asked if she welcomed the big increase in claims being processed.
Well, good evening, Cathy. Well, look, the government under Conservatives presided over this total collapse in Home Office decision-making over the last few years. That's why the backlog has soared. That's why we've got so many people in asylum hotels. And that is still at a record high. That is costing the taxpayer £8 million a day. And that's why I think Rishi Sunak really needs to stop the boasts and get on with actually delivering instead.
So you could be months away from being in government, in the Home Office yourself. So how soon would a Labour government stop the boats? How soon would you clear asylum seekers from those hotels that you're so concerned about?
We've already set out a 5-point plan, and that means strengthening border security and fixing the Tories' chaos in the asylum system. The top 3 things that we would do on that is set up a new cross-border policing unit with new, stronger powers, a new security agreement, as well as more police officers to work with European forces to go after the gangs and smash their supply chains so that you stop the boats reaching the French coast in the first place. Second thing is fully clearing the backlog and ending asylum hotel use, including these fast-track procedures. And the third thing is a new returns and enforcement unit with 1,000 additional staff because the number of returns has dropped by 50%.
Well, you've pledged to ditch the Rwanda scheme if you get into government. Are you open to processing claims in other third countries offshore, as other European countries are considering?
Well, there are already different forms of offshore processing in the UK asylum system. For example, the Homes for Ukraine scheme is a form of offshore processing. People apply from other countries, their cases are dealt with, and then they're given visas. Similarly, the Hong Kong system.
So would you look at expanding those? I mean, Rwanda, you made that quite clear, but other third countries, sounds to me like you're quite tempted by that suggestion.
So we've long said that the government should be seeking to secure a new agreement with European countries to include returns. And what Keir Starmer's always said is that we have to look at what works. I think what most people want to see is strong border security and also a properly controlled and managed asylum system.
The government wants to stop the gangs too, and they haven't had much success. So I mean, people,
exactly.
Yeah, but people may struggle to believe that another government would have any better success. So I want to push you on this offshore processing scheme because, Italy, Austria, Germany, Denmark, they're all exploring processing asylum claims outside the EU. If it's good enough for them, why not you?
What Keir Starmer said is that we would look at anything that works. And that is, I think, the real practical, pragmatic approach that you would expect us to take to make sure that we can deliver those 2 things, the stronger border security and also a properly managed and controlled asylum system. So the UK does our bit, but so we also have proper enforcement in place.
And if you get that deal with the EU that you want, do you accept that you would have to take a share of the refugees, the migrants, as a kind of quota scheme? You'd have to take some share, you just don't know what it is.
No, we're not going to join the EU member states quota scheme. We've been really clear about that. We are not a member state, or we are not going to be. We've left the EU.
Well, then how are you going to get a deal with them?
We are not rejoining. So what we are looking at is what we could do in terms of having returns, but also recognising that there are children, for example, unaccompanied asylum children who have family in the UK who are currently being exploited by people traffickers and people smugglers. Any arrangements that you have to do always have to be in the interests of the UK, and we have to be very clear about that. But let's be in no doubt, we won't be joining the EU member states quota scheme. That is for member states. The UK is not a member state.
Yvette Cooper, thanks very much.
Thank you.